guys. Sophia here. Kind of sucks that we gotta do it like this, but that's okay. We're gonna work with what we got. I hope everyone is safe and healthy at home. I've been locked up for a week now, so that's great. Anyways, so this is for my book report here on LSD spirituality and the creative process by Marlene Dobkin de Rios. A quick overview. The book observes a study by Oscar Janiger on the effects of LSD and how it relates to spirituality and creativity. And Marlene takes the findings from the study and her own knowledge of plant substances and psychoactive substances and puts them together to create this book. So a quick background on LSD. I'm sure we all are familiar with it. For those of you that maybe aren't so familiar with it or don't really know how it came to be or whatnot, it was synthesized in the 1930s. The exact year I'm not too sure. I think it was the late 30s by a chemist named Albert Hofmann. The effects weren't found the effects of LSD weren't found until the 40s when Albert Hofmann accidentally ingested LSD and started having hallucinations. And it was actually interesting because he was a scientist, researcher. He was observing his high and was able to take notes throughout the high, and it's on the internet, I read them. He explained each level of it and all the different things that were happening, which was really cool. I feel like most people would probably be afraid, but I think because he was a scientist and researcher, he probably was very interested in what was happening. And the reason, if this is anyone's wondering, the reason that he was researching LSD was to help find a cure for migraines, which was interesting. So he came across this acid and was trying to find a medicine for migraines. So that was interesting. There was many scientists that started researching LSD closer into the 40s and 50s and 60s before it was made illegal. And yeah, great. I hate that I'm on the spot with this. Anyways, something else interesting I found was that the US military actually they did testing with LSD to see if it could be used as a weapon, in war, but they found out that it had no use. You can see my arm hairs. So yeah, they found out there was no use for that. Another thing they were researching, not the military, but a lot of researchers in the 40s and 50s and 60s, they were trying to see if the hallucinations that come with LSD were similar to the hallucinations in a schizophrenic patient. But I think now that that's probably a little, with our knowledge that we have now, I think that we can conclude that that's probably not the same thing. And I think that was their findings too, where that it wasn't very similar. But yeah, so a little bit about Marlene herself. She is the author here. She was a medical anthropologist and psychotherapist who studied the use of psychoactive plant substances. She wrote many books on the subject, and she conducted some research in Brazil. Love my stutter. The research in Brazil was on the use of ayahuasca among adolescents. So the study that was looked at in the book was by Oscar Janiger. He was I don't know if it's Janiger or Janiger. I'm pretty sure it's Janiger. It sounds better than Janiger. So I've been saying Janiger. He was an American researcher who conducted many studies on LSD. From his main study, he got a sub-study that was on the creative process. So it was both kind of in the first one, but in the second one, he was focusing more on the creative process. And people came from all over the states to be a part of to be participants in the research. Many of them had no expectations on LSD. Which I guess makes sense, because I feel like now if this same study was to be done, many of us probably have a bit of an idea of what psychoactive substances do to the mind. So I feel like a lot of us would probably have expectations on what to expect. So I think that was probably good for the study back then, that people were able to go into it blind. They didn't have like ideas about it or ideas about drugs in general. I mean, they probably had ideas about drugs, but not like to this extent. His goal was to figure out, I'm not sure if I mentioned this because I've filmed this 3 times now, so I don't know if it was in this one or another one, but his goal was to find the characteristics of LSD and the high itself, but just characteristics of it in general. And so through that, he bought a house in LA, and his study went on there, and he had like just a bunch of rooms. There was like relaxing rooms, meditation rooms, music. You could listen to music. You could be doing art. There was a garden if you wanted to go to the garden. People weren't forced to stay there either. Like, they were allowed to leave whenever they wanted to, but they were always monitored by someone. So he wanted to create a neutral environment for everyone, so it wasn't like I guess like no biases in the study for people. Yeah, so I kind of mentioned the sub-study, which I'll get into more when I talk about the creative process. But yeah, there was a sub-study that came out of it. So in the book, in the chapter on spirituality, Rios noted that Yaniger did not believe LSD is essential for spirituality. He considered the 24% of participants who reported having a spiritual experience as an anomaly in the data. She differs, however, arguing that with low doses, 24% is remarkably high for participants who are in a neutral setting and not prepared for a spiritual experience. So, in conclusion, for the bit about spirituality, I feel like from my understanding was that there wasn't much connection between the two. A lot of the participants said that there wasn't too much feeling of spiritualness or a spiritual experience in any sorts. I think that probably for people that are spiritual, they might take it as that, but many people that might not be spiritual might not have taken that experience in that way. The book does focus a lot more on the creative process than on the spirituality side, and I also just found a lot more interesting stuff on the creative process because of his sub-study that came from the study. So getting into the creative process, in the original study, one of the rooms was an art room where you could draw, and there was like stuff to make clay and paint, do whatever you wanted to do that was art. And so there was a doll in this room, and one of the people in the original study just started sketching the doll, and Yaniger noticed the difference over time from the artist like sketching the doll, that it started off as normal and turned into very abstract. So he was interested in this, and that's where the sub-study came from. So from there, he got just a bunch of artists and focused it on the creativity and the creative process, and got them all to sketch this doll over their whole high. So at like 20 minutes in, they would sketch the doll, and then at like an hour in, and progressively got more abstract and a bit kind of, some of them were kind of creepy looking, but also beautiful. Like, you could tell that the drawing was just, it seemed heartfelt. Like, it was pretty cool to see the difference from like the start to the finish. The first one, the last one, looked pretty similar, but at like the peak of the high, the drawing was so skewed. Like, it was crazy. I did have some pictures on my PowerPoint, but if you just search up Yaniger's sub-study on the creative process, like doll drawings or something like that, you can see them. Or I might even insert, like with this video, the pictures of the dolls if you're interested in seeing that. Just gotta see if I'm missing anything here. Sorry, I spoke a lot. They're offering a new. So a big thing that was said here was that Yaniger did not believe that LSD would make an artist into someone who was not. Rather, it offered the artist an exploratory tool. So something else that I read was very interesting, and it just left my head as I said that. Oh, here it is. One of the artists that was in the study had said that one trip of LSD was like 4 years of art school, which I thought was very interesting, because I love art and I love to be creative in that way. So to hear that, I was like, wow, that's pretty real. So overall, great book. I have a couple quotes here from de Rios, or like her ideas from her conclusions of the study and the book. So she believes strongly in the therapeutic values of psychedelics. She believes that psychedelics could be used for like alcoholism, drug addiction, depression, anxiety, and I've seen this. I am in psychology, that's the program that I'm in, and I've seen a lot of like studies done on the use of like mushrooms and like different types of psychoactive substances that have helped people in their depression or a lot of addictions as well. So that's very interesting. I actually had a psych instructor at Douglas College that went on an ayahuasca retreat for her OCD and depression. So that's pretty cool. I think there should be more, people should be looking into that more, and I think that probably in the countries where they do more of that, like South America and those areas, I think they're onto something that we turn away from, because society or people, I don't know, that's a whole nother topic. Anyways, so she concludes that substances like LSD can be beneficial. This is a quote from her. The implication is that you control the environment, select the subjects carefully, monitor their behavior, and prepare them, and you'll see very positive outcomes. I just had to move this here to see what I had below. So that's just all my opinions there. But so I think that for the time of the book and the study, it gave us a big insight on things that we could not be studying